All right, Jacob, please begin. Ripples of inner movement.
Ripples of inner movement. Yisro's identity. Few of the weekly Torah readings are named after individuals. So whenever such an association is made, it commands attention. It commands special attention. And this is true with regard to other Torah readings. It surely applies to Parshat Yisro, the story of the giving of the Torah. Naming the reading Yisro indicates a connection between him and the event. Yes?
Yep.
Who was Yisro? The Torah describes him as the Kohen of Midian. Our sages offer two definitions for the word Kohen. A, ruler. Yisro governed the land of Midian. B, priest. He led the Midianites in their worship. Indeed, our sages relate that Yisro had recognized all the false divinities of the world. The connection
hang on a sec. The translation that Yisro had recognized, I think is a little wanting, because recognize somehow implies he was aware of them, he knew of them. He's trying to say acknowledged, but it really means to say is that what our sages do say he worshipped. Yisro had worshipped, had experienced all of the divinities, all of the deities, all of the religions of the world at that time. He had explored and experienced each and every one. So that's the other meaning of the word kohen. He was a priest. And the implication actually is that in these various religions and cults, and they're all idolatrous, he didn't just participate, but he was a priest there. He was high up in the social order, the hierarchy of the idolatrous practice. Hence, the next paragraph, continue, Jacob.
The connection between the first interpretation and the giving of the Torah is obvious, for it reflects the extent of Yisro's commitment. Although he lived amidst wealth and comfort, he was prepared to journey into the desert to hear the words of the Torah. But the second interpretation is problematic. Our sages teach that it is forbidden to tell a convert, remember your previous deeds.
So why would the Torah therefore call him the priest of Midian, conveying, in the words of our sages, the second meaning? They're both true. He was the governor, that's meaning one, but that's not enough. The Torah tells us through our sages that what is the Torah meaning? What does the Torah mean when it says Kohen Midian, that he was involved and worshipped, and again at a leadership level, all the false deities of the world. And the Rebbe is asking, why would the Torah mention that? It's forbidden, in fact, to remind a convert of their past. In the same way, it's forbidden to remind about tshuva. Once a person has done sincere repentance, it's forbidden to say, yeah, but you used to do this, I used to do that. That is a transgression of one of the commandments in the Torah.
But he hasn't done anything yet. At this point, he's still who he is.
No, he's come already to, number one, he's come to the desert. This is a process of conversion. Number two, it's forever in the Torah. It's after the fact. Even if at this point it's not so. The Torah is saying Vayova and Yisro came, the Kohen of Midian. What's he coming for to convert? Who is he? And right away we bring up his more than sordid past, idolatrous no less, and it's forever. And the question becomes stronger. The opening paragraph that we just read, then this is the name of the parsha wherein the Torah describes the giving of the Torah. It's called Yisro. And who is Yisro? Kohen Midian. And what does Kohen mean? Explanation number 2. That's the name of the Parsha where the Torah is given. So it's an anomaly. It's a very strong question. Continue. Read the next section too, please.
Recognizing deities, acknowledging God. To resolve this question, it is necessary to understand the source of idol worship. The Rambam writes, during the time of Enosh, mankind made a great error.
Just want to, before you read it, I just want to add a little bit prefatory comment that why does the Rambam, this is coming, we're getting now a direct quote from the Rambam, the Mishnah Torah, his code of Jewish law. Why are we getting a history lesson of how idol worship began and its source? For 2 reasons. Number 1, the primary reason is understanding that how idolatry began adds to our clarity in terms of our purpose as Jews. Our mission as Jews, as we discussed in this morning's class, to be a light unto the nations. So if you have to illuminate the world, you have to know what the world is to illuminate. Wherein lies the error that we need to illuminate, or the darkness we need to transform into light. So therefore, in the work of the Rambam, which is halacha, tells us the origins of idolatry. The second and related reason that he gives us this history lesson, when this work is not a work of history, but a work first and foremost, but a work exclusively of halacha, Why are we getting history in a halachic work? History belongs in the history works, which are a valid part of Torah, not in the Mishnah Torah, the Rambam, the Yoda Chazaka, which is all about halachas. So why are we getting this history in the work of halachas? I gave you the first reason, because it's guidance halachically for how we are to engage the world. The second reason I'm going to share with you now is why this work of halacha gives us a history lesson is to answer a thorny question. And the question is a stumbling block if it's not answered. And what's the stumbling block? The stumbling block is a very simple question. How is it possible that idolatry ever got off the ground when God communicated with man? Directly, initially. First to Adam, and then to Noach, 10 generations later. So humanity begins with God communicating with man. How do they end up serving idols? So the Rambam explains how the transition, the slippery slope began. So let's read it. During the time of Enosh, continue.
During the time of Enosh, mankind made a great error. They said that God created stars and spheres with which to control the world. He placed them on high and treated them with honor.
This is already after, this is after Noah. This is a generation or 2 after Noah. So they said, of course there's a God. Nobody denied that. That was part of the history and the culture and the tradition. God speaks to man and spoke to man, and commandments and what have you, and prohibitions. Everybody knew that. It's part of the culture, part of the history of humanity from the very beginnings, which isn't that long ago. It's 20 generations earlier. That's not so far back. But what happened? So people said, who are these people? It doesn't go into detail here, but these are people that were very clever and sought power and means by which to control and manipulate the masses and amass wealth and power and glory and honor. So they said, God created stars and spheres, natural forces with which to control the world. He placed them on high and treated them with honor. God treated these angelic forces or these natural forces with honor. They're referring to the celestial forces. Here's the big error. Okay, next line, Jacob. Where's the mistake? The mistake already is in what they said, mind you. But keep on going.
Accordingly, it is fit for man to praise and glorify these entities and to treat them with honor.
Their error is God did not treat them with honor. When you say these words, deceptively simple and respectful words, what are you saying? God treated them with honor, so you're implying that they have some kind of independence, which is why God treats them with honor. The sun, the moon, forces of gravity, the sun which gives light and warmth. So God treats them with honor, so should we. That was the mistake. That was the mistake. To use another analogy, the halacha is, or the sentiment in the Talmud is, it's a famous quote. Morning, Alan. Chamra lemara tivusi l'shakya. You're in a restaurant or in somebody's home, and the waiter serves you a glass of wine. Chamra lemara. Wine belongs to the master. Tivusi l'shakya. You say thank you to the one who pours it to the waiter. And you should. That, by the way, this is a small measure of a person's decency. It's how you treat the waiter in the restaurant, the fellow who wraps puts your groceries into the bag at IGA, or the girl or the guy behind the counter. How you treat such people. You paid for the goods, they're yours. And you'll notice that most people, they grunt and take the stuff and move on. Or you smile and you say thank you. Or if you happen to encounter on the street the garbage collector, you nod and say good morning. They're shocked when I do this because no one does that, or at least not enough people do it. And certainly when it comes to the holidays and it's an opportunity to show your gratitude, you give them a gift, a bottle of wine, cash, whatever it is. That's the measure of decency. You don't have to do this, but you are sensitive to another human being, particularly someone who is doing a very servile, whose living is collecting garbage, waiting on you at a table. And I would add, so not only you also say hello and smile, but you treat them with the same respect and dignity that you treat every other human being, the president. The president, your colleague, whatever. Respect for the human being. Now, let's go back to our story here. So in the time of Enosh, the people were saying the same thing for the moon and the stars. We have to, it would be dishonorable to God if we did not honor his agents. Like you thank the waiter, even though it's not his. Where is their error? It's a subtle but very deep error. Why do we thank the waiter? Why are you thanking the garbage collector? They're being paid. You pay them with your taxes. Why are you thanking them? You're thanking them because they're human beings that have choice. And what they bring is they're not mechanical instruments, but they're human beings. And they're invested in what they do to whatever degree. And you acknowledge that, and you appreciate that, and you thank it. You thank them. Whereas the error is that the forces of nature, they're just instruments. They're not human beings with free choice, with feelings that you need to acknowledge, recognize, and thank if you have received something from him or her. They're instruments. So the example Chassidus gives is the wood chopper comes in the morning and brings the wood. So you thank him. You're paying him, but you should thank him. And would you say thank you to the axe and thank you to the axe? Of course not. Because the axe has no choice. The axe is a mere passive instrument. And to thank the axe is an act of foolishness, but in this case, a terrible error. To acknowledge and thank the forces of nature, which is what they did. They erected these temples for the sun and the moon and fire and water, the various forces of nature. And they gave them initially, some degree of independence of God. Initially, it was the God's channels. That was not lost on anybody, but generations, they themselves became the object of worship. And the point was the people that ran them, the priests, so they became the custodians. So you have to honor me to get to the sun god. So it was all about power and abuse and the sacrifice of children. So that's how it all began. It was subtle. Just like thanking the waiter. It was a subtle error. Nature is not God's waiter. Nature is God's instrument. You and I are God's waiters because we have free choice. He endowed us with free choice. So you thank every person that you encounter for whatever they did, whether they have to, whether they're paid, whether you paid them. There's an element of choice in the way they do it, and they're there and they're invested. And your thanks dignifies them. You have no idea, my friends. We have no idea. Sometimes we get a glimpse, we hear a story back, how one-time thank you changes a person's life. A dignified smile, a thank you, a wave. Have a good day, thank you. People cleaning the street, you walk by, or they're cleaning the garden, they're doing the garden in the park, paid by the city. Thank you, have a good day. The Kiddush Hashem makes them feel valuable and dignified, and it can change their life. I know, case, a smile, a hello, changed a person's life. Gave them a sense of self-esteem, dignity, value. I'm a somebody. I'm somebody like everybody else is. And then a whole new course in life is charted. I can. Continue, Jacob. Thus the worship, continue.
Thus the worship of false divinities is rooted in a misunderstanding of the fact that God influenced this world through intermediaries.
Continue.
Our sages comments, there's not a blade of grass on this material plane that does not have a spiritual force compelling it to grow. Idol worshippers, however, attach independent authority to these intermediaries, thinking they have control over the influence they disperse. In truth, these gods, in quotes, are merely an axe in the hand of the chopper, with no importance or will of their own, and therefore it is wrong and forbidden to worship them. By saying Yisro had recognized all the false deities in the world, the sages implied that he was aware of all of the different media through which God channels energy to the world. Despite his knowledge of these spiritual powers, he rejected their worship, declaring, "Blessed be God. Now I know God is greater than all the deities."
I would add that he didn't just have a knowledge, he was a seeker. And he'd experienced this. And now, having experienced this and acknowledges God, that acknowledgement of the unity of God is all the more richer and truer because he came from that past. It's a great praise of Yisro. Let's continue. Read the next section. We're a little short on readers.
Sorry?
Go on. Yeah, okay.
The microcosm encouraging the macrocosm. Yisro's acknowledgement of God was not merely a personal matter. His words of praise brought about the revelation of God in his glory in the higher and lower realms. Afterwards, he gave the Torah in perfect confirmation of his domination over all existence.
Not domination, dominion.
Sorry. dominion.
Right, there's a difference, right?
Correct. My apologies. Yisro's individual acknowledgement of God expressed the purpose of the giving of the Torah. This prepared the macrocosm, the world at large, for such a revelation. To explain, the Rambam states, the Torah was given solely to create peace within the world. Yet peace is not the purpose for the Torah's existence. The Torah existed before the creation of the world. It is God's wisdom at one with him. Thus, just as God transcends the concept of purpose, so too does the Torah. The Rambam, however, focuses not on the purpose of the Torah itself, but on that of the giving of the Torah, why the Torah was granted to mortals. He explains that the Torah was given not merely to spread divine light, but to cultivate peace.
Okay, this needs elaboration, which we don't have enough time, but we're going to continue we're not going to address the distinction he made between the essence of Torah and the mission of Torah, the giving of the Torah, the two levels. Essence beyond purpose, giving is about purpose. We're not going to elaborate, but the point was made. But the focus now is the purpose, which the Rambam said is what, quoting our sages, to make peace. Torah is given to make peace. What is meant by making peace? So, Yeshua, would you read for us the next section? When twains meet.
Okay. Peace refers to harmony between opposites. In an ultimate sense, it refers to a resolution of the dichotomy between the physical and the spiritual. The forward movement enabling a world in which God's presence is not outwardly evident to recognize and be permeated by the truth of his being.
Whoa, that's quite the sentence. That's like scratching your ear like this. So let's just say it in simple language. That peace means to make harmony between that which is in opposition of each other. What's the greatest opposition that exists? The greatest, the most fundamental, irreconcilable, or what appeared to be fundamentally and forever irreconcilable is heaven and earth, physical and spiritual, infinite and finite. Infinite, you can't get infinite into finite. It don't fit. So that would appear to be the most irreconcilable of realities. And it's that, to reconcile the spirit and matter, heaven and earth, the infinite and the finite, that Torah was given. Continue.
Okay. On the verse, quote, the heavens are the heavens of God, but the earth he gave to the children of man, quote, end quote. Our sages explain that originally there was a divine decree separating the physical from the spiritual. In other words, the nature of material existence prevented one from truly appreciating spiritual reality.
Now, when he says divine decree, we don't mean this in the decree in the sense that it transcends logic. It's a law of life, a law of nature. The bigger cannot be contained by the smaller, and the infinite can certainly not be contained by the finite. So the gulf between spirit and matter, spirit which is not bound to time and space, and matter which is all about time and space in all of its guises and forms, are, by the law of nature, irreconcilable and exist in parallel universes, never connecting. Yet the Torah was given to not just bridge the gap, but fuse the two. Continue. At the time of the giving of the Torah.
At the time of the giving of the Torah, however, God, quote, nullified this decree and allowed for unity to be established between the two.
Again, this natural division. Moreover, continue.
Moreover, true peace involves more than the mere negation of opposition. The intent is that forces which were previously at odds should recognize a common ground and join together in a positive activity.
Okay, so he's saying that peace is not merely putting down your arms. Okay, we're not at war with each other. You go your way and I'll go my way. That's not true peace. True peace is when they become one and fuse together. Similarly, continue.
Similarly, the peace which the Torah fosters does not merely involve a revelation of godliness so great that the material world is forced to acknowledge it.
Okay, he's saying something else now. He's saying what is not true peace is when there's peace because one side is overwhelmingly superior, so the other side gives up. So the net result is there's no war. It's not true peace because the only reason the other side gives up is because they don't have the resources to fight back. If they did, they would. And so there's a need for the victorious force to keep its boot on the neck of the vanquished. The victor must forever be in a position to overpower the vanquished, the defeated. That's not true peace. It's only peace because I'm stronger than you. So you surrender. Surrender isn't true peace. True peace is reconciliation, harmony, oneness, friendship. So the Torah doesn't want that there should be peace in the world, that the world's resistance to him be overwhelmed by his revelation. And okay, we give up. There's a God and we acknowledge his truth. I want to do what I want to do, but I can't because the consequences are too great. He's revealed and whatever, it's embarrassing or there's punishment. That's not what God wants. He wants a relationship. He wants a peace that engages us. In the world itself, our own ego embraces the divine, not surrenders to the divine. Embraces, reflects the divine. Continue. Instead, the Torah's intent is to bring about an awareness of God within the context of the world itself. Within the context of the world itself. Not overwhelm it, but godliness resonating from within. The former enemy, which is the ego, becomes an ally, expressive of the divine. The I becomes expressive of the ultimate I. Continue.
There is godliness in every element of existence. At every moment, creation is being renewed. At every moment, creation is being renewed. Were God's creative energy to be lacking, the world would return to absolute nothingness. The Torah allows us to appreciate this inner godliness and enables us to live in harmony with it.
Okay, it's a big statement that he's saying, a very big and central idea in Torah, and as expounded and explained exquisitely in Hasidus, that creation is ongoing, and God's invested in all of creation every moment, and creation is within him, and he's bringing it into being from absolute nothingness into existence every millisecond. That's lost on us. We don't feel or experience that, but that's the truth. So godliness is within all things. Torah guides us and allows us and grants us the ability to reveal godliness within creation, not overwhelm it, to reveal the godliness ever present. That's what it's all about. That's the peace we're talking about. That's the Messianic era. That's the ultimate state of the world for which the Torah was given, for which God created the world. Now we're going to see that what Yisro did, he is the symbol of that, the prototype, with his past, because of his past. Continue.
In a personal sense, Yitro's acknowledgement of God's supremacy accomplished this objective. From his involvement with, quote, all the false deities in the world, quote, he came to a deep recognition of God's sovereignty.
This is a very, very subtle statement. He doesn't elaborate at all. He is saying it's not a matter of Yisro worshipped idols and rejected them, and now he came to embrace the truth of the one God. That's not what is being conveyed here. He's saying he discovered God within the deities. In sincere people, let's make this in simple language. Earlier, I described the priests and the charlatans and who sought to exploit the masses and did and abused them and controlled them. The masses involved in the worship of these false deities were sincere seekers of transcendence of God, looking for something higher. Yisro saw in all of these quests, in the quest of humanity, in all of its perversion, he saw the depth of it. Man seeking God because the divine is within. To rephrase what I just said, what he saw was the divine spark in every human being struggling for liberation, for expression. He saw that in the deities, in its worship. Friends, this means today as we stand on the threshold of Mashiach's coming, the Rebbe told us, open your eyes and see what's happening in the world. Is the world the unrest of it all. And the woke liberal culture and all of its manifestation, it's really the deep stirrings and a quest for the divine, for the transcendent, for the truth, for the emes, for God himself, and therefore engage and facilitate its birth, the birth of humanity. We're in the throes. We have been since before the Holocaust. Now the actual birth is about to happen, or is even in the process, the birthing process. See within the world itself, in its corruption, it's a corruption of divinity, of a quest for the divine. We start to develop this kind of perception, which one does, the more Hasidus one learns, the more we can penetrate and see through the veneer of life and history and see the stirrings, sometimes very deep. But now, on the surface, just waiting to blossom, explode into light. Yisro already sees that. He saw that in the idolatry, and he saw the divine spark that is really what's being searched for. So when he comes now to Torah, he brings all that with him. That's the whole purpose of Torah. That's the peace we speak of. Read the last sentence. He kind of sums it up there.
Okay.
That this transformation.
The transformation of Yitro made possible the giving of the Torah, which in turn transforms the world.
Are we seeing this, right? It's all about transformation, which means the revelation of the divine within creation. What brought Yisro? What brought him? Now I know the truth was his search, was his experience, recognizing that all of those, the deities and the idolatrous practices was all at its core, man's longing for God. And each one of them was a corruption of some divine truth. Big statement I just said. Every idolatrous practice, religion, there's a truth, a corruption of a divine truth, which we need to heal and transform. All of them, which we have spoken about in the past. Some of the world's great religions. Yisro saw that. That's what Torah is all about. Revealing God within all of existence and recognizing that all of existence pines and yearns for him. Let's conclude. The Zohar is this the concluding piece. Thank you, Yeshua.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll ask you to mute yourselves, folks, if you're not reading, because we hear as you hear my every little.
Rabbi, if everyone would think the way Yisro thought, the Mashiach would be here tomorrow.
But no, today.
Today.
Indeed,
Now.
that's why we are learning this, to spread this awareness. Yeah.
Jacob, don't take another drink.
But
He's coming.
I'm sorry, what?
Jacob and I shouldn't take another drink. He's coming.
Yeah.
Mashka.
Well, you can welcome him with a little l'chaim in your hands. Not so terrible. That's all right. Okay, remind me of a beautiful story, but not for now, because we're running out of time. But if we finished, I'll tell you. A joke story, but very telling. Okay. So, Alan, read. Can you read the last section there? Well, the second last, from darkness to light. The second last, okay. Go ahead.
I haven't got anything with me here.
Oh, okay.
My phone is dead.
All right, you're listening. Okay, so
I'm listening.
All right, Ricky, are you there? I saw you there before. Are you there? No, I think she was. Okay, Anne, would you read for us? It's a little bit dense here. Good morning, Anne.
Yes, good morning. Good morning. I'm here. Yes.
I'll help you.
From darkness. Can you hear me?
I hear you. Yeah, there's a lot of Hebrew words here, so I'll explain.
Okay, I will do my best. I'm sure it will be my best.
It'll be wonderful.
It'll be wonderful. Here we go. From darkness to light, the Zohar associates the transformation of material existence with the verse, I saw an advantage to the light over the darkness.
Now stop. The simple meaning of the verse is the wisest of all men, King Solomon is saying, I saw the advantage of light over darkness. Do we need King Solomon to tell us that there is an advantage of light over darkness? The verse must mean much more than that. And simply, light has an advantage over darkness. So what's the deeper meaning of the verse? Continue.
The word Yisaron, sharing the same root as the name Yisro, translated as advantage, can also be rendered as higher quality.
Okay, we're hearing a lot of noise in the background.
I think the gentleman who was before, I think he didn't unmute himself.
Alan, you mute yourself. I don't know if it's you or not. Okay. Yeah, now it's quiet. Okay. Continue. So the word Yisro, you just said, sharing the same root as the word name Yisro, translated as advantage, can also be rendered as higher quality. Now, let's revisit that verse. Thus, continue.
Thus, the verse can be interpreted to indicate that light, which comes from the transformation of darkness, possesses a higher quality.
All right. So the meaning of the verse now is, it's deeper, truer meaning. It's not, he's saying, I saw the advantage of light over darkness. Rather, I saw the advantage of a light that comes from darkness over ordinary light. Light that comes from darkness. It's a different order of light, a higher quality than ordinary light. A truth that is arrived at through the transformation of darkness, which at its core, truth lies, but in the corrupted way. Just a simple example. This is a truism in every area of life. Any idea, start with an idea that you've only grasped because you first struggled with it, because there was confusion, you didn't grasp it, and then you work it through, you understand it much richer and deeper than someone who understood it immediately. It's true any relationship. Any relationship, if you were always on your best behavior and there was never any cross words expressed and never any hurt, it's a nice relationship. And we strive for that. But in the relationship, inevitably there is hurt and so on. And if as a result of the hurt, we dig deeper in our commitment and connection to each other, and it's a much richer relationship. It's much richer when there's absence makes the heart grow fonder. It's a truism in life. You appreciate being together because you have been separate. That's one of the meanings of mikveh, that husband and wife separate every month during that time of the menstrual period, it's in order that when the coming together is so much richer because you were apart. So the distance is the fuel for the deeper connection. So that's what the meaning of the verse is here. The meaning of the verse is here. Not that light has an advantage over darkness. It's saying that light that comes from darkness is a superior light than ordinary light. So continue.
Yes, there are two implications to this. Firstly, that the transformation of darkness results in a higher quality of light than would otherwise be revealed. And secondly, that this higher light does not stand in opposition to the material world. On the contrary, the darkness of the world is its source.
Again, that's this very deep idea of seeing the divine in every level of creation. On the contrary, the darker, the deeper, more concealed is the light. And therefore, when that darkness is transformed, the light is the ever greater. Which means that in our darkest moments of history and most painful as a people in one's personal life, ultimately when Mashiach comes, and that's what we're working towards, those moments, those very moments are re-experienced and transformed from within to be the greatest light. As I always say, that's virtually almost incomprehensible to us presently, but that's the ultimate truth. Okay, thank you, Anne. And finally, Reb Michel, Judge Shore, please read to us the final section.
The path to redemption. The Tanya describes the giving of the Torah as a foretaste of the era of the redemption. For when the Torah was given, all existence stood in a state of absolute oneness with God. At the time of the giving of the Torah, however, the revelation was dependent on God's initiative, since the world that had not yet been refined. Its nature stood in opposition to the manifestation of godliness, and so the miraculous revelation did not endure. In the centuries that followed, however, mankind's observance of the Torah and its mitzvahs had slowly woven God's godliness into the fabric of the world. In the era of the redemption, the dichotomy will be permanently dissolved, and we will realize that our world is God's dwelling.
Very good. So that is when Mashiach will come, and that's what we're on the threshold of, and that's what we're working towards, and that's the whole objective, is the world being God's home, the world that was created in such a way that seemed to be opposed and irreconcilable with him, in the end is experienced as the deepest place of intimacy with him, like a home, a place of sharing yourself with your soulmate in the deepest, undisguised, uncompromised way. And that's what Yisro sets in motion. He comes to God, to the recognition of God because of, not despite, because of his experience of all of the deities of the world. That itself led him ever deeper to the discovery of God. Not despite, because of. And that's the ultimate objective. The world isn't overcome. The world is suffused. The divinity that was ever present is revealed. Friends, have a wonderful day, a wonderful week. Thank you all, and thank you to our readers. And we should share only good news and happy tidings and merit redemption without delay. On a personal and a collective level.
Shavua Tov, everyone. God bless you all.
Thank you all for
joining.
Thank you,
Rabbi. Yes, you call up, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you so much. Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov.